I'm Carrie Woodcock, again with the World Language Academy in Hall County. Did you know that over 100,000 Hispanic children are in the state of Georgia in the year 2010, along with countless children of other languages who are poised and ready to enter our schools as English learners? I want you to know also that the parents of these English learners overwhelmingly list the #1 factor for success of their children is academic preparation. They willingly and trustingly place their children, the lives and the futures of their families, in our hands as educators, and we're failing them at alarming rates. So today I'd like to share with you 3 things that we can all do as a community to help improve the outcomes for these children and also help other children. The first of these is to improve cultural understanding. And in order to do that, I want to give you a little illustration about a little boy I met named Miguel, who came to this country at the age of 8, was placed in a Georgia 3rd grade classroom after having spent 7 years away from his parents. He had never attended school, and he was so excited. He was full of energy. He was just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go. He wanted to have friends for the first time in a school, go to school for the first time, and then live with his parents. But unfortunately, due to a lack of cultural preparation, cultural understanding on the part, or for Miguel, for his parents, for the educators, and for the other students, his experience in school was not what we would expect or what we would hope. He was consistently, as Comer mentioned, walking through the halls. He was silenced in the hallway, wasn't allowed to speak or to touch his peers, because touching was a big part of his culture. And he got in trouble, so he was called to the office on numerous behavioral reprimands, if you will. Parents were called to the office as well. And this goes against the cultural norm for Hispanic parents. For those of you who don't know, to be called in, you're from a rural setting. The academic preparation is the responsibility of the schools in their minds. That behavioral component is what they felt was their duty. Now, by being called to the school, they felt that they had failed as parents because they were given the communication that their child was not able to be educated because of his behavioral concerns. So on it went that Miguel was given an ultimatum, he and his parents, and he was standing in line in the lunchroom. He was told, you're not to touch, you're not to speak, you're not to get out of line, because this is it. This is your last chance. I can't imagine telling an 8-year-old child that. And he was standing dutifully in line with his little fork wrapped around it with a napkin. And the children in front didn't move, but the other kids did, right? So what do you do when you're in the 3rd grade? You're hungry. You know you've got a few minutes to eat. You can't speak. You can't touch. And so his little fork tilted forward, and he poked the child in front of him. Well, as kids do and 3rd graders do, they all screamed, he's touching me, stabbing me. And off he went to the office, yanked him out of line. He didn't get lunch, #1, so that was a big problem. His parents were called to the office. And I'd like for you to know what they did, because this broke my heart and broke the heart and the soul of that child. He who had been so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed only a couple months prior to that. His face dropped, his eyes, I'm having a hard time telling you about it. But I want you to know that his parents made the decision that they were no longer capable as parents to prepare their child for school. So they decided to send him away and send him back to Mexico to be with his grandparents, where there was no school. So this child then was given the information or this communication that these people in this great land of opportunity that he was so excited about coming to see didn't want him. But the most crucial or critical message was that his parents didn't want him. And this should not happen to any child. As long as we are here in this state, this should not happen in our state, in our world. But I want you to know that if there had been improved cultural understanding on the part of Miguel, on his parents' part, on the educator's part, and on the children in the school, if they all had that empathy that we've talked about here today, think of the outcome. I dare say that Miguel, who, by the way, would have graduated this year, when I watched children walk this year, it broke my heart to think about Miguel. Back likely in a home on a rural ranch setting in Mexico. No education, and likely not able to read. So the first thing we've got to do, improve cultural understanding, #1. Number two, I would like to see that we all promote the development of a strong language foundation, and I think that's what here at the Speech School they do best. So certainly the Rollins Center promotes that we should help parents, educators, community leaders, and early caregivers understand about the importance of building that language foundation. We need to provide opportunities for children to be engaged in conversation. We need to keep those conversations going by lifting the language. We need to tune in to children. We need to ask open-ended questions, and we need to lift the language of the children. So number one is improve cultural understanding. Number two is to build a strong language vocabulary foundation. And number three, contrary to popular belief, we have got to maintain and develop the home language of all of our English learners. It's of the utmost importance. Sometimes people ask me, why in the world would you want us to maintain and develop the home language of these children? We're in the United States where English is the language of importance, the language of dominance. The tests are all in English. But it's important for us to understand that the stronger the mother tongue, or the stronger your home language, the easier it is for you to acquire a second and perhaps third and fourth language. So we need to build on those strengths that the children bring to us and have the parents help us to maintain and develop the home language. I don't know if you know this, but educators, community leaders, people across the nation convey the message on a regular basis that what you're going to have to do is stop speaking your language to your child. You need to speak in English in order for your child to learn English. And unfortunately, that is the opposite of what we need to do. It goes contrary to what the research says. We've got to help parents to understand about building the home language. Let me put this into perspective for you. Imagine tomorrow, for those of you who don't speak Mandarin Chinese at home, imagine that you're given the opportunity to move to China. And they tell you, the first thing they tell you when you arrive in China, you know Chinese is one of the hardest languages in the world, and what you're going to have to do is stop speaking English to your toddlers tomorrow in order for your children to do successful or do well in Chinese school. What would those interactions between parent and child be within your home? You know, for me, I know a few words, a few phrases in Chinese. They would likely be very limited commands, very limited interactions, and I would pretty much silence the rhythm and the music of my home language for my children. So imagine then that I'm no longer developing their language, their concepts. And it's important for you to understand that two languages do not develop independently of one another. While one language is developing the concepts, your home language, your parents taught you all of these concepts and ideas, those ideas transfer directly to the new language. All you need is the words. So imagine if your children then in China had that silenced language. How would they do? I can't imagine. I run into children and their families all the time around Georgia, whom I've known over the years, and the parents are no longer able to communicate with their children. Middle school kids, they can no longer communicate. At a time, I cannot fathom that, at a time when a child most needs his or her parents, they are not able to communicate and get those rich pieces of advice that the parents should be able to share with their children. So it's very important for us to understand that we need to maintain and develop the mother tongue or the home language of our children, of our students. While the parents are working to maintain and develop the language, the teachers and the educators and the early caregivers can be working to input the knowledge and the concepts in the language of English. And then those two will connect. The language will connect to the second language, which is English. Trust me, this will happen. I have seen this thousands of times. It will happen. So, I leave you today with 3 things that you need to know. I hope that you will spread the word that we can do and everyone in our community can do to help our students. And that is to improve cultural understanding, to build a language or vocabulary foundation, and to maintain and develop the home language of our English learners. Thank you very much.